Hello, welcome to the Cash Games Locks podcast. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Christopher Ruckus at Space Jam 23 DFS. We're talking about some cash game teams for you for FanDuel and DraftKings. We got a couple of lineups that we made, some tentative lineups. Obviously, it's early, way before the games start, but we'll give you some guys that we're looking at, some guys in good spots. Give you like a tentative lineup to go kind of base some ideas off of. Maybe you're new to building cash games. Maybe you're just trying to get some ideas for tonight. But either way, we'll start off at the top here at FanDuel. I went with Chris Sale, the chalk pitcher. Facing off against St. Louis, sometimes a tough matchup. Right now, they're missing Matt Holliday. I mean, that's a big bat out of this lineup. Matt Adams on the DL. So really not a lot of big bats to worry about. You worry about them as a team, but Chris Sale is just mowing through everybody right now. He has 10 or more strikeouts in 8 of his last 9 games. I mean, he's expensive, $11,300, but you know what you're going to get out of Chris Sale. I mean, he had a bad game against Minnesota last time. I believe he gave up 5 earned runs, but still scored 11.66 FanDuel points. So, I mean, he's your top option. He's arguably the best pitcher in the game right now, aside from maybe Max Scherzer. So, I mean, it's hard to get away from Chris Sale tonight.
Yeah, that's why I didn't get away from Chris Sale tonight. I played Chris Sale too. There are quite a bit of options, but when you're talking 1,000 more roughly from Sonny Gray and Keuchel and only 700 more from Garrett Cole, Chris Sale is just his consistency is far superior. Even last game, the Twins got random runs where they would, squeak a single, get a walk. Fielders, there'll be an error, bases were loaded with 1 out, and they were hitting a single, scoring 2 runs. So he didn't get crushed. I mean, he had 10. I think he had 10 or 11 strikeouts.
10.
How many people did he even walk anyone?
He had 1 walk, but you were right. There was a lot of errors and weird failed fielders' choices and all kinds of things that really ran up his pitch count a lot too.
Yeah, so there was a lot of randomness involved with that. So you can't think about it. I mean, before his 11, it was 22, 16, 25, 24, 24, 15. I mean, the guy's just a machine. And he just makes sense for a little bit more. With that being said, though, you've got to find value elsewhere because 11.3 price tag is not cheap. So I went Yan Gomes at catcher. I know we talked about Gomes. I think you went elsewhere. He had a good game on Sunday. He's one of those guys, he's hit or miss. But for 2.2K against Erasmo Ramirez, I love his price.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think he's in a great spot. As far as cheap guys, men's salary guys, there's not a lot of guys that you really feel good about. But, I mean, Yan Gomes, like you said, he's a good hitter. I mean, he gets clutch hits. He gives you good at-bats. He's got power. So he's a guy that I'm definitely considering. But a guy that I went with, Yasmani Grandal, gets Robbie De La Rosa. He's $2,700. I think he's a fine play. As you look at Robbie De La Rosa, he's had his times where he's been really good this year, but he's also awful against left-handed batters. He's got a 389 WOBA, allowed 10 home runs already, and it's not for lack of sample size. 202 batters faced this year, so very good against righties, pretty bad against lefties. Very bad, I should say. And Grandal, obviously switch hitter, so 2,700. If you've got the salary, I think he's the guy you go with under 3K if you're not punting completely.
Yeah, no, we said that. I think he is your top play if you're not punting with Gomes. I took his teammate at first base, Adrian Gonzalez. His price just is a little bit down. He's in a slump. His last 10 games, he had 2 games that were negative. For the most part, he gets you positive points. Playing, I think this game is in Miami?
Yep.
No, or not Miami, in Arizona. My mistake. They just got out of Miami. Yeah. So it's at Arizona, Hitters Park, going from a pitcher's park. If you've listened to my podcast, any articles I write, I love taking hitters going from a pitcher's park to a hitter's park. Their salaries just aren't where they need to be, so I think there is some good value for 3.1K for Adrian Gonzalez.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think he's in a fine spot. I went with another guy that I thought was really underpriced, Lucas Duda, $2,800. This is a guy who has some pretty significant home-to-road splits. Obviously, Citi Field, not a great hitter's park, but he's batting .298 at home compared to .216 on the road this year. So he obviously has some sort of comfort at home. Maybe he likes hitting in front of the home crowd, whatever it may be. But at 2.8K, and against Kyle Hendricks, who he's had his moments where he's been pretty good this year. He's actually been decent overall, but 331 WOBA allowed to lefties. Still having his struggles there. And 2.8K for a guy like Lucas Duda who has double dong upside. He's got power, great lineup spot. I think 2.8K. Like you said, Adrian Gonzalez in a great spot, but if it's not him, take the advantage of the discount and get Duda, because those are the two guys who are they're just too low price for me.
No, you're right. I mean, I played Duda. We'll get to him. I played him on DraftKings, but he is underpriced here. We did it a little bit different so you guys can see who we like in general. Would you get Duda? He's 2.8. Was that what he is?
Yeah.
That's a steal. Moving on to second base, I took Skywalker, Neil Walker. I love him. I mean, his price just doesn't go up. He's pretty much been a lock for like a single, a run, and an RBI. It's pretty much like 2.5 to 3.5. It's his realm. Fairly consistent. Doesn't strike out a ton. So I love Neil Walker at 2.6K against Justin Verlander. Verlander hasn't pitched a ton this year, obviously. Did he pitch? How many games has he pitched so far this year?
I think he's only pitched 2.
Only 2, I think. Yeah. So, against Verlander,
he hasn't been that good.
No, he hasn't been that good. His velocity has tailed off a ton. I think Neil Walker's in a good spot. He hits better from the left side as it is with his power. So Neil Walker's my second baseman at 2.6K.
Yeah, and Verlander's become a contact pitcher. I mean, 11 2/3 innings so far, and only 4 strikeouts, 13 hits. So, I mean, guys are putting the ball in play, and that's perfect for Neil Walker. All you need for him in your cash game, slap a couple singles, like you said, maybe get an RBI, and that's about it. I'm going with my boy, sticking back with him again. Had an okay game again last night. Another multi-hit game, his 3rd in a row. Rougned Odor, $2,700. Got to assume that he's going to be batting in the top 2 of that lineup once again. Gets Miguel Gonzalez, so it's a fine matchup for him once again. Gonzalez has actually been pretty good this year. 290 will allow to lefties, but I mean, Odor is just putting the ball in play. He's hitting it hard. I mean, he's just hot right now, and for 2.7K, I mean, it's hard for me to pass up. And he's one of my favorite cash game plays, so I'm just going to go back to the well here.
Yeah, I mean, we said Odor's been playing great, so yeah, I don't mind him at all. And like we said, we're giving you more than one option, so enjoy it. One of the reasons we've been picking so much value is because I think we both want the same third baseman, Josh Donaldson, 4.1K. He's against a bad lefty. I think last time we were in this scenario, did he double or triple dong? What was that night? We had 21.
I don't. It was the day. It was a double dong because he hit a home run, I think, in his first at bat, and hit the game winner in the 9th. But I think he had like an RBI double in between, like 5 or 6 RBI. It was a huge game.
He had a monster night, and tomorrow probably going to happen again. So I'm going to make sure I have him against Eduardo Rodriguez, Josh Donaldson.
Yep. Here's my swerve for you. I did pay up for somebody, but it's not Josh Donaldson. It's at a different position.
Did you take Danny Valencia?
I did take Danny Valencia. His teammate, Danny Valencia, in case you didn't know by now, he's not Josh Donaldson, but he's Josh Donaldson Jr. He masters left-handed pitching. Doesn't have quite the power, but he's very good against left-handed pitching. $2,800. If I can't afford Josh Donaldson in my lineup, Danny Valencia is really the only other guy I'm looking at for my cash games.
No, I don't fault you there at all. I mean, that's pretty much what happens on the nights you feel like you have to play Josh Donaldson. You can say the same thing for Danny Valencia. It sucks that you can't run like a utility spot and play them both.
Yeah.
Shortstop, we both went to the same spot, Xander Bogaerts, unless you changed it, but 2.7K, I mean, he's the chalkiest of the chalk of the chalk.
Yep.
Of the chalk. Of the chalk. I mean, the guy is the epitome of chalk, top of the order, top half of the order, in a hitter's park, Marco Estrada. There's not much to be said. He's just too cheap. Shortstop is awful. It would be a little bit tougher if, say, the pricing was a little bit more appropriate, where Carlos Correa was maybe 3.4K, Johnny Peralta 3.1K. I just feel like Xander Bogaerts is priced a little bit below. I mean, he's priced the same as Asdrubal Cabrera, Nick Ahmed, and Elvis Andrus, Andrew Romine, Hector Gomez. I feel like Bogaerts is a little bit underpriced, and I think we take advantage of that for 2.7.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there. I think that he's in a fine spot. I think he's a guy that you really need to have. So I'm with you there. He's going to be popular. No reason not to get him. And next up, I'll get to my guy that I paid up for. We were talking about him before. He's just been absolutely incredible recently. It's a lefty-lefty matchup, but he had one of those last night. Had himself a fine game against C.J. Wilson. Brett Gardner, $4,600. I mean, I don't know what else to say about this guy. He has 5 games in his last 10 with at least 3 hits. He's hitting for power, 4 home runs along that time, 7 doubles, a triple. I mean, he just does it all. He steals bases, he scores runs, he leads off. I mean, you absolutely have to love Brett Gardner. He's one of my favorite cash game plays every night because you know what you're going to get. You're going to get good at-bats. You're going to get a guy that gets on base and scores runs.
Who is pitching for them?
Andrew Heaney.
Wasn't he a reliever?
He made one start so far.
Where's he from? Where did he come from last?
I think he played for Miami last year.
For Marlins, right? He was a Marlins prospect. So here's a crazy thing about Brett Gardner. I didn't play him, but I love Brett Gardner, so I'm just going to talk about him for a second. He hasn't stole a bag in his last 10 games, and he's got 15 on the year.
Yep.
I mean, and he's still putting up huge numbers. He's got to be one of the most consistent players this year. I'd love to see it on like a bell curve to see what he's actually where he ranks with that. But you got to love him. I mean, he's a great play. I went super cheap with another Dodger. Andre Ethier had a big game last night. Dong, double. Just a monster game. It stinks. I didn't roster him last night, and I've rostered him for like the past week when he's averaged negative .25, I feel like. It's just the way the cookie crumbles, they say. So I'm going to take him again tonight, 2.2K, Andre Ethier.
Yep, he's actually my next guy as well. I mean, it's really hard to pass him up against a guy like Robbie De La Rosa. It's so bad against left-handed batters. So, min salary, get yourself some Andre Ethier. Should be batting right around 6th in the lineup. And then last guy, Michael Brantley, $3,100. Gets Erasmo Ramirez, who, as we know, he's not the guy that you stack everyone against, but he hasn't been great. Actually been pretty decent against lefties this year. 253 WOBA allowed. But at that price point, Michael Brantley is the guy I'm looking at. He had a great game last night. 3 hits, stole a base, walked, RBI, runs scored. Those are the type of games you expect from Michael Brantley. I feel like this might be the start of one of those patented streaks he likes to go on because we know he's a much better hitter than he has been recently and one of the lowest strikeout rates in the league. So he's a guy that always puts the ball in play, makes him a great cash game play.
Yeah, I took Brantley too. He's way too cheap. I mean, you want to talk about a pricing mistake. I mean, he's cheap like if he's playing a good pitcher, you're contemplating. When you see Scott Van Slyke above and Torrey Hunter below, and then a bunch of guys on the DL next to him, something is mightily wrong. I mean, he's mispriced, hands down. I mean, minimum, he should be like a Starling Marte type, 3.5K minimum. Yasiel Puig, I mean, minimum. He's underpriced. I have him as well. I'll go to my final one, George Springer. I love him. He was my last player picked. I may change him out. I have 3.7K left. I'm a big Springer fan because he does a lot of everything. I think Jock and Puig are also fine plays. They're going to be, in Arizona. I think they're both fine plays, but I just like Springer does a little bit more. I feel like he's more of a contact hitter. He has been struggling, but that's the first time this year he struggled. So I still love him. I still love Springer.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's still one of my favorite young players. I got a soft spot for George Springer. I love him. So moving over here to DraftKings now. I mean, for your first pitcher, it's a 2-pitcher site. There's plenty of value. You pretty much have to get Chris Sale. If you didn't, you probably got creative and fit a couple other guys in the top, maybe like a Sonny Gray and a Cole Hamels, something like that. But I know my first pitcher is Chris Sale, $12,800. He's expensive, but like we mentioned, I mean, he's in a great spot. And the Cardinals are a team that on paper you think they're intimidating, but if you look at their numbers actually as a team against left-handed pitching, 4th highest strikeout rate, which is kind of surprising.
Really?
Yeah, 4th highest on the season, 24% against left-handed pitching. And walk rate 9.8, which is good for them, but not good for them facing Chris Sale, who's walking just 5.6% of batters. So the Cardinals also 24th in team WOBA against left-handed pitching, only a 126 ISO. Not a whole hell of a lot going for the Cardinals tonight. And I think that might keep Sale's ownership down a little bit because there's that preconceived notion that the Cardinals are, a team to be reckoned with, but not this year against left-handed pitching.
Well, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Well, I did Sale as well. But then my number two, who's far from my number two this year, he's pitched great. It's your boy. How about his last outing? Let's just talk about that last complete game shutout against the Yankees that Dallas Keuchel had. Man, he destroyed. What do you have? How many strikeouts did he have? 12 or
12.
12 Ks. I mean, one walk, 116 pitches. The guy was magnificent. And it's funny because that came off a bunch of mediocre games after he had a monster game against the White Sox. So I love Keuchel. We saw what McCullers, is that how you pronounce it? McCullers?
Yeah.
Saw what McCullers did last night. I think Keuchel's a little bit better of a pitcher than McCullers, so I went Sale, Keuchel.
Yeah, and I mean, Keuchel's pitched 3 complete games now this season. He's an efficient guy. It doesn't tell you the whole story when you look at things like his strikeout rate, because, you know, even with that, his strikeout rate is just 21.1%, but his ground ball rate is 64.5%, fly ball rate of 15.6. So, I mean, I don't really care who you are. You're not getting the ball in the air against Dallas Keuchel. I mean, I love him.
He never hurts you. He just doesn't really hurt you.
Yeah, and he doesn't mind you making contact, but when you make contact, that ball is on the ground. It's weak contact. So, Keuchel, one of the most underrated pitchers in the game, if you ask me. I love him. I went a little cheaper with my guy. I went Ryan Vogelsong against Miami. Miami at home. Okay, rest in peace, Giancarlo Stanton, for the next 4 to 6 weeks. Unfortunately for them, he's out. But fortunately for me, wanting to play Ryan Vogelsong, this is a Marlins team that's already 29th in the league against right-handed pitching. 21% strikeout rate, 109 team ISO. You take out the 26 home runs that Giancarlo Stanton has already hit. I don't know what the number is for that team ISO, but it is tiny. They have 0 power. They have 0 upside. Vogelsong is not a great pitcher, but he's a good pitcher. Last 2 games, 28 and 21 DraftKings points. I think he's a fine cash game option. I mean, he hasn't given up an earned run either of his last 2 games. And I mean, who's going to beat him on this team? Christian Yelich not having a good season. Ichiro Suzuki batted second a couple times. I mean, I think he's a perfectly fine punt option at pitcher that you really don't worry about imploding. Maybe he won't be great. Probably won't get a lot of strikeouts, but he's not going to hurt you.
No, I mean, I think that's fine. I don't think that's a bad play at all, actually. No, I think that's you're right about him.
Yeah.
Vogelsong's been great. So going to catcher, you already talked about him. I'll talk about him again. Yasmani Grandal.
Yeah. I mean, we already mentioned why we're going. I went ahead and paid for somebody here because he's in a good spot at home, and it's a little bit of a contrarian move. I like to be a little bit different in my cash game. So it's Russell Martin, $4,400 at home against lefty Rodriguez, who kind of set the world on fire with his first couple starts. Had a couple great outings, but has been nothing short of terrible in a couple starts since then. 3 2/3 with 6 earned last game. Pretty good against Kansas City game before that, but then against these same Toronto bats, 4 2/3, 9 earned runs in Boston on the 14th. So, I mean, this is a guy that's just, he was good, and then he was really, really bad. So I'm picking on him here, and I try to be creative with my bats, and then Russell Martin just kind of fit there. So $4,400, he's expensive, but he's in a really good spot tonight.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we're on the same first baseman. You were already on him once. Yeah. Lucas Duda, I don't think I need to say much about him.
I think you have to be. I mean, 3.4K in cash. He's just such an obvious play, if you ask me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not close. I mean, I don't think he should. He's a 4K player.
Yeah, and like on FanDuel, you got Adrian Gonzalez close. There's no one even in his vicinity on DraftKings price-wise. Yeah.
So, mispriced.
Yep. All right, second base, Ben Zobrist. This is who I went with, $4,100. Facing off against the other De La Rosa, Jorge De La Rosa. And I mean, Zobrist has been the model of consistency recently. He's getting on base, he's getting RBIs, he's walking a ton, showing patience at the plate. You got to pay a little bit for him at $4,100, but he's another one of those guys that's just a great cash game play that people probably won't be paying for because there are some other options. But I'm a big fan.
Yeah, no, I mean, I talked about him earlier. I stayed with my same second baseman, Neil Walker, for the same hits better from the left side. Justin Verlander has been less than Verlander-esque. He's got a scarier name than anything else. So yeah. Neil Walker stayed with him right at second base.
Yeah, and speaking of guys we stay with, Danny Valencia, where I can't afford Donaldson, I go with Valencia. 3.2K. I mean, Josh Donaldson Jr. I'm going Danny Valencia again.
Yeah, so I went with him too. I'm a little bit upset by that. I wish we didn't both do that, but I mean,
You know how I feel about Danny V.
He's a phenomenal play. Let's be real here. He's a great play. So I went Danny Valencia, shortstop. I completely punted with recency bias. 395 in his last 12 games, multiple multi-hit games. Cesar Hernandez had a huge game last night. Huge series against the Nats. Had a big series against the Yankees. I mean, he can steal bag, hits for contact. I mean, I hate playing the Phillies just because, but the he's been fairly good in the past few, and I just don't like any shortstops tonight.
Yeah, there's one guy I feel okay about paying for, which is why I paid for him, I should say. But Brandon Crawford, $3,800, quietly been one of the better hitters in the game at shortstop. There haven't been a lot of guys that have been consistent. And Matt Latos, 366 WOBA allowed to left-handed batters. Woof. I'm going Brandon Crawford, 3.8K. Got to pay a little bit for him, but like you said, shortstop, not a good position tonight. Some big names, but not a lot of them in great spots. You know, you got Troy Tulowitzki against Sonny Gray. And I think that Brandon Crawford's one of those guys that can kind of set you apart. Not that you necessarily need to be set apart in cash games, but $3,800, I think he's by far the best option on that price.
Yeah, he is by far the best option. Heading into the outfield, you know this already, but one of my favorite young players is Eddie Rosario. I'm a huge fan of him. I think he's a little bit underpriced at 3.1K, considering DraftKings pricing is actually decent. You can't just literally play sale, plug and play, get a bunch of value. So Eddie Rosario, 3.1K against D. Scalfini, Great American. The Twins obviously are coming around. We saw the big game they had last night. Not much to say for me. I needed cheap because I have two expensive pitchers, so he was one of my cheap. And I can get a guy that has home run upside. He can get double digits for me. I love having that with a cheap play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I went with a cheap guy as well. And this is the guy who has an extra base hit, at least one extra base hit in 5 of his last 6 games. Chris Parmelee, $2,900. Going up against Colby Lewis. I mean, I think he's in a fine spot. He's just a guy that's just been crushing the ball since he came up. Batting .302 since he got called up. Getting on base. Baltimore should be in a pretty good spot at home at Camden against Colby Lewis. Despite the fact that Colby Lewis pitched pretty well. I mean, Parmelee ripped a double off Corey Kluber, too. So this is a guy that I feel comfortable paying this small price tag against anyone.
Yeah, I went somewhere else. He's one of my favorite players at roster. He's got the platoon advantage. Great hitter's park. He had hit for the cycle a couple weeks back. Brock Holt, 3.5K. He's had some ankle. He hurt his ankle this weekend. Not too concerned about it, but I love Brock Holt. He's one of my favorite players at roster just because he does. When he is facing a righty, he tends to put the ball in play far more often than not. He gets on base. If he bats in the top half of the order, I love him.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, I think he's the only guy who's hit for the cycle this year, too. So definitely a very versatile player that I like. And you already know my next outfielder. I love to play him in cash games. Brett Gardner, $5,100. You got to pay for him, but I'm paying for Brett Gardner because, I mean, it's hard to argue the fact that he's probably been the most consistent hitter in, I'll say in the American League. He's been the most consistent hitter over the last month. I won't say in all of baseball, but in the American League, over the past couple weeks at least, been the most consistent hitter. He does it all, so I'm getting Brett Gardner.
I took Michael Brantley.
Yeah, and I don't blame you there. We already mentioned Brantley. My last guy, what?
I just couldn't afford. He's for 4.4K. When you have that much remaining salary, and you're like, oh, I can get Michael Brantley. You're like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, just get him in there. It makes sense. And my last guy, Josh Reddick, the guy that he's in a great spot a lot. I've had him on his bad days. I've had him on a couple good days as well. But he homered last night. He's $4,000. Gets Jorge De La Rosa. I think he's in a fine spot.
Yeah, I mean, you know how I feel about Josh Reddick. He's like one of my favorite baseball players, but he hurts me because how we've been on him. We weren't on him last night. He went for a home run. We were on him his past 3 nights where he stunk, And then the night before that, he had a home run, and we didn't have him. So we've been struggling to get on his right boat. Hopefully, if we play him back-to-back nights, maybe we'll get on the right boat.
Yep.
So I love Josh Reddick. I think he's in a really good spot actually tomorrow.
Yep. All right, and that's gonna wrap things up for us here. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.